Over 2,500 years ago, a young prophet held captive in Babylon received a direct message from heaven, a prophecy so accurate that it foretold the coming of the Messiah, the destruction of Jerusalem, and the events that are unfolding right before our eyes today. What you're about to see is not a theory. It's a prophetic map that spans centuries, civilizations, and kingdoms, all the way to the time you and I are living in. What if I told you that the end begins not with the apocalypse, but with this ancient vision that connects everything? Stay, because in the next few minutes you'll discover one of the Bible's best-kept secrets, the 70 weeks of Daniel, and I assure you, you will never look at history or the future the same way again. The wind blew the sands of time over the deserted streets of Babylon. Daniel, now an elderly man, walked with the dignity of a prophet and the burden of an exile. The once invincible empire was beginning to crumble, and yet the old man's heart burned not for politics, but for promise. He had been fasting for weeks, dressed in rough clothes covered in ashes, crying out to the God of Israel for mercy. The scrolls of the prophet Jeremiah lay open before him, his trembling fingers brushing over the words. 70 years are determined for the desolation of Jerusalem. His eyes moistened. "Is the end of the exile near?" he murmured. The people were broken. The holy city was still in ruins. The temple, a painful memory. But Daniel wasn't asking for justice. He was asking for forgiveness. That night, as he raised his prayer, the heavens began to shake. A glow filled the room. Time froze. The earth held its breath. A being of light descended. He didn't walk, he floated. His face was like lightning, his voice like many waters. It was Gabriel. "Daniel, man greatly beloved," he said solemnly, "I have come to give you understanding of what is to come. Listen carefully, for what begins today will seal the history of the world." Daniel's eyes opened even wider. The angel raised his hand and pointed to the firmament. The stars were aligned, as if awaiting the eternal decree. Then Gabriel spoke the words, "70 weeks are determined upon your people and upon your holy city." And right there, as the prophecy began to unfold its mystery, the light grew in intensity, enveloping everything. Gabriel's voice seemed to resonate from within the universe itself. Daniel, on his knees, face to the ground, felt that each word weighed more than gold. It wasn't a revelation, it was a decree, an edict sealed in the heavens before time. 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city, to finish the transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for iniquity, to bring in everlasting justice, to seal the vision and the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. The angel stretched out his hand, and a vision unfolded before Daniel. Like a veil torn from the future, centuries passed before his eyes. Kingdoms being born, empires falling, bloodshed, promises fulfilled, and a central, mysterious figure who appeared and disappeared. The Anointed One. From the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem, until the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Daniel didn't fully understand the numbers, but he felt the weight of their meaning. A divine clock would begin to tick, and nothing in history would ever be the same again. Every week, every year, every event was written with heavenly precision. Gabriel showed him the temple being rebuilt, then the same temple crumbling. He showed him the coming of the Messiah and his death. "He shall be cut off, but not for himself," he declared with pain. Daniel's heart broke. Would the Messiah die? A shadow crossed his vision. A future prince, an abomination. A final week filled with darkness. But before Gabriel finished, the light around him turned reddish like the harbinger of a conflict still distant but inevitable. A war between good and evil, waged in the hearts of men and beyond. Take this vision, Daniel, for though it may tarry, it will surely be fulfilled. the angel began to rise, taking the radiance of heaven with him. Daniel fell to the ground, exhausted, breathless. He didn't know if he had been in that experience for minutes or days, but one thing was certain. Time was ticking. The countdown had begun. Dawn illuminated the walls of Babylon, but for Daniel, the heavenly night still burned in his mind. He had woken up trembling, with the echo of Gabriel's words resounding within him, since the going forth of the commandment to restore. The old prophet, wise in his time, understood that command would be the starting point, the first beat of a prophetic clock that would measure the centuries. Days passed. The Babylonian Empire crumbled. Persia took control. Daniel, now advisor to the Medo-Persian kings, waited. And then, like a prophetic thunderclap, the decree came. King Artaxerxes III, in his 20th year, signed an edict to restore Jerusalem, not just the temple, but the entire city, with its walls, its gates, its life, a document sealed with the authority of the known world. Daniel knew in that instant, time had begun to move. The scribes recorded the date, the year 445 BC. In the invisible, the weeks began to advance, one after another, like gears in a divine mechanism. 7 weeks for the reconstruction, 62 weeks for the arrival of the Anointed One. As workers raised walls in Jerusalem, angels guarded the promise. And as empires continued their course, an invisible line led history toward its climax. But Daniel would not see its fulfillment. As an old man, he retired to prayer, knowing that his vision would be for future generations. In his heart, he carried a certainty. What has been written will not fail. Generations passed. Empires changed their faces. Babylon fell. Persia reigned. Then came the Greeks, and then Rome raised its iron banner over the world. But while kings warred over territories, an invisible history continued to advance, woven by the hand of God. The weeks continued their course. 70 weeks, and 69 had already passed. In a humble village of Judea, during the time of the Roman Empire, a child was born. His cradle was a manger, his mother a young virgin, his father a carpenter. The wise men searched for him. The angels announced him. Still hidden from the eyes of the world, the clock in the sky ticked. The Anointed One has arrived. When he grew up, he did not dress like a king, nor did he command armies. But he spoke with the authority of heaven. He healed, he taught, he forgave, he walked among men, and yet he was eternal. "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me," he said one day, reading Isaiah in the synagogue, "because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor." Hearts began to burn. People murmured, "Could this be the Messiah?" But others, blinded by law and power, began to plot his downfall. Centuries before, Daniel had written with sorrow, "The Messiah will be cut off, but not by himself." And now that phrase hovered, invisible, over the head of the man of Nazareth. The multitudes followed him, waiting for bread, miracles, words of life. But he knew the hour was approaching. In the invisible, the prophetic clock marked the end of the 69th week. Jesus of Nazareth, the Anointed One, the one who walked on the sea and spoke with the voice from heaven, was slowly ascending toward Jerusalem, not to reign, but to be rejected. The city welcomed him with palm branches and songs. Hosanna to the Son of David. But the same lips that sang would soon cry out, "Crucify him." Daniel had seen it centuries before. And after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off, and not by himself. He was betrayed. He was judged. He was scourged. Silent as a lamb. Innocent as light. And he was nailed to a cross between two criminals. The world went dark. The veil of the temple was torn. The disciples fled. Hope died, or so they thought. Because even though he was cut off, it was not in vain. Not for himself, but for everyone. In the invisible, the prophecies burst forth like fire. Every word of Daniel was fulfilled. Every number was exact. The Anointed One died. And yet, on the third day, he rose again. The 69th week had ended with the sacrifice of the Lamb. But the most astonishing thing is that 1 week still remains. A final one. A mystery. A prophetic pause that spans the centuries. The sky was silent. The Anointed One had been cut off, just as Daniel had written. Jerusalem still stood, but not for long. The 69th week had ended, and yet the 70th week did not begin immediately. The wise men who read the scriptures didn't understand. Why did prophetic time stop? Where was the last, final, decisive week? A great mystery had begun. A prophetic pause. A divine interlude. God, in his sovereignty, had stopped the clock. The counting of weeks had ceased, but the plan had not failed. This pause was not a mistake. It was an unexpected grace, a space of mercy for all nations. The church age began. The message of redemption, born in Jerusalem, began to spread throughout the world. Jews and Gentiles, men and women, free and slave, all called to be part of one body. But while the multitudes heard the good news, in the invisible, the clock remained stopped, like a sleeping giant. The 70th week awaited. Daniel didn't see it. None of the disciples experienced it, but the signs were there, like whispers of the future. A prince is to come. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. In the middle of the week, he will put an end to the sacrifice. Daniel had written of a dark future, a final week marked by deception, by a false peace, by abomination and judgment. Years after the death and resurrection of the Anointed One, Daniel's words echoed again with a terrifying echo. Although the 70th week had not yet begun, a part of the prophecy had yet to be fulfilled. And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. In 70 AD, the Roman Empire, under the command of General Titus, besieged Jerusalem. The city, once the jewel of the Most High, became a field of ruins. The temple, the one that had been rebuilt centuries before, the place where the Anointed One had taught, was destroyed stone by stone. Fire devoured the holy place. The columns fell. The ark was no more. The priests died with the sacrifices still in their hands. The smoke ascended like a wailing to heaven. And so the word was fulfilled. There will be a flood, and desolations will last until the end of the war. Daniel had seen it centuries before. Not only the arrival of the Messiah, but also the fall of his city. A generation that failed to recognize the time of his visitation was handed over to judgment. The survivors were dispersed. The people were scattered among the nations, and the prophetic clock was still ticking. But God's eyes did not stray from his promise. For even though judgment had fallen, the final week still awaited its hour. The curtain had not yet fallen on history, and from the ashes of Jerusalem, the stage was set for the final climax. The temple was in ruins. Jerusalem was desolate. Its people were scattered to the corners of the world. Daniel's prophecy had fallen like a lightning bolt into history, marking each century with the precision of a celestial clock. But after the city's destruction, the heavens remained silent. For almost 2,000 years, the 70th week was not activated. God, in his mystery, kept the prophetic clock stopped. But the world did not stop. Empires rose and fell. Wars marked the soil of nations, and although it seemed that the prophecy had been left in the past, the shadow of the final week grew silently. In the midst of that silence, a promise remained alive like a weak but persistent flame. There is yet 1 week. The end is yet to come. Meanwhile, on the invisible scene, the gears of destiny turned slowly. Nations formed alliances. Ideologies grew like dark seeds. The global scene, unbeknownst to Daniel, was beginning to align with what Daniel had seen centuries earlier. A future leader. a global pact, a massive deception, an abomination that would bring judgment upon the world. The prophecy was still breathing. The final week was still waiting. But one sign would change everything: the return of the people of Israel to their land. For nearly 2,000 years, the people of Israel lived as a living prophecy, scattered, persecuted, wandering. But the promise remained written in heaven. They would return. And one day, the impossible happened. May 14, 1948. In a modest room in Tel Aviv, David Ben-Gurion read a declaration that resounded around the world like thunder. "We proclaim the establishment of the State of Israel, against all logic, without an army, without a settled land, surrounded by enemies. The ancient biblical people were reborn as a nation. Just as Isaiah had written centuries before, 'Shall a nation be born in a day? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children.' Isaiah 66:8. And while many saw politics or diplomacy, heaven saw prophecy. The prophetic clock stopped since the 69th week, began to tick again. The stage for the final week, the 70th week, was beginning to take shape. The land was ready. The people were returning. The nations were in tension. Only one element was missing: the prince who is to come. For Daniel wrote that in that final week, a powerful leader would emerge. He would make a covenant with many, but in the middle of that week, he would betray everything. With Israel back in their land, the prophetic clock begins to tick down the final seconds before the start of the 70th week. But for it to be activated, Daniel announced the appearance of a key figure. And he will confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. Daniel 9:27. On the world stage, tensions are rising. Nations are seeking peace, but they cannot find it. Chaos, crises, and global conflicts are crying out for a savior. And then he emerges, a leader, charismatic, brilliant, with a supernatural ability to unite enemies, resolve conflicts, and propose global solutions. He is not a violent tyrant at first. He does not impose with a sword. He convinces with words. He is the prince who is to come. The same one Daniel spoke of, and later the Apostle Paul would call the man of sin, the son of perdition. This leader will do the unthinkable. He will sign a peace pact with Israel and many other nations. It will be celebrated by the UN, by governments, by religions. Some will think he is the Messiah, others a political genius. But in the invisible, something is being activated. The 70th week has begun. 7 years. That is the time Daniel marks as the final stretch of the plan. But this leader will only show his true face in the middle of the week, when he will break the pact and unleash unprecedented tribulation.